All right. Hey, welcome to another Making Pittsburgh Healthy podcast. And I want to thank you all for listening. This is a new show. It's off to an amazing start. If you would please share this with your friends and family, do a review, any comments, good, bad, I can take it. Let me know what you like, what you dislike. But we not only want to make Pittsburgh the healthiest city in the world, we want to transform the world. And today you are in for a treat. We have Sora Vernikoff on the line, and she is a no-diet weight loss coach. Her website is nodieting.net, so you can't forget that. Over 20 years ago, Sora healed herself of compulsive overeating. She has a book, Eat What You Want, Stop When You Want. A no-diet weight loss program became a #1 Amazon bestseller. So Sora, welcome to the show. Tell us a little bit about yourself. What do you like to do for fun? And what gets you up in the morning?
Well, thank you, Dr. Tressler. It's really a pleasure to be on your show. Actually, I'm a neighbor. I live in New York City, so that's kind of neighborly in its own way. Yeah. What gets me up in the morning? What gets me up in the morning is process. God comes first in my life, and I get up and I feel joyful, and I'm thankful for another day, and I have a plan for that day, what I'm going to do. I love to create things. I love to make things happen, and I love to do work. I love my friends. So I think what gets me up in the morning is balance, my faith in balance.
we all try to have balance. That's tough, but I'll tell you what, when you start the morning like that, we're off to a good start. And I'm really excited to have you on the show. We talked a little bit before just what you've done and what you're doing. Why don't you tell the listeners, 20 years ago, you healed yourself of compulsive overeating. I really believe this is a heart of many problems today. I mean, 70% of Americans are overweight. Obesity levels are going through the roof. And you beat this, 25 pounds off. You've kept it off since 1984. Tell us your background there. How did this happen?
You know, I love that you said I beat this, because I really did beat it, and no one ever quite said it that way, but I seriously beat it, and I'm very proud of that because I tried everything. So my story is, Dr. Tressler, that over 20 years ago, I taught in East New York, Brooklyn, Brownsville, which is really a very tough place, highest murder rate. I mean, whatever, it's really tough. And I wasn't prepared, having studied education, to be put in that kind of situation. And I really suffered. You know, I was thinking of leaving, but I turned out to be a fighter, and I stayed the course. And what happened was I finally learned after a couple of years how to keep these kids in their seats, how to keep it quiet. But it took a lot of work and a lot of effort and a lot of Tylenol. But yeah, one day I looked at my 35 fourth graders and I said, "Hey, Sora, how come these kids who walk, talk, and do all those other things listen to you, but food has no animate qualities? You can't stop thinking and you can't stop eating." And I was always dieting while I was teaching as well. At that moment in time, Dr. Tressler, that was my aha moment. That was a moment that I said, wait a minute, Sora. If I do everything right and these kids listen to me and food can't walk or talk, why am I thinking about food all day, which I was all day? It was ridiculous. And so I got an idea to stop dieting, but there was a caveat in that. I needed to journal every thought prior, during, and after, because I knew I wanted to find out what was going on in my brain. That became very important to me. So every meal I journaled before, during, and after for years. I took off the weight. And what I learned in the journey was that no matter how much I ate, nothing was enough. That was the repeated pattern. I could have a piece of cake, it wasn't enough. I could have a chocolate bar, it wasn't enough. And so I overate. But over time, I learned how to understand this and work myself. But what I found was nothing was enough. So when I lost my 25 pounds, which was my goal weight, I knew that day that I could transfer my classroom management techniques to food management techniques. And I developed an easy-to-use Eat and Stop Yourself no-diet weight loss program that's centered around the notion that once you learn how to decide how much is enough food for yourself, then you can eat and stop. Once you eat and stop, you're going to think less about food because you're always going to be having enough. And then you can take off your weight and have a non-overweight mind, have a non-overweight food thought mind with a matching non-overweight body. And that became very important to me because when you go on a diet, you're thinking about the foods you want. You're thinking about the foods on the diet. You're thinking about what you can't have. You're thinking about food all day. But now when you always have enough and you see, wow, I can have enough of this, enough of that, then you're going to think less about food and you're going to have a thin body and what I like to say, a thin mind, which is really the key here, you know?
I love that. I'll tell you what, you just threw a bunch of gems out there right now. That was packed full of,
Oh my God,
packed full of juice. But you know, when
Oh.
you said food can't walk or talk, and what drives me nuts is our body is just a piece of flesh. Our hands are in control of our mind. We are in control.
Yes,
And
yes, sir. You know,
that is,
that's right.
that's a battle. And if we could battle that, and when you talked about journaling, and people, when you're listening to this, start journaling like Sora did, everything you eat. One, it will become an awareness, what you truly are putting in your mouth and into your body. And that may be the mental freedom. Was that the breakthrough mentally, Sora, that you found something emotionally, mentally that you actually overcame, that you knew you could control, and then the physical happened? Was it first mental, and did the journaling create that?
That's a great question, Dr. Tressler. So let me share something with you listeners and you know, yourself, obviously. Everything starts in your mind. So whatever problems you have or whatever you're struggling with, it doesn't even matter what it is. It all starts with your belief system, okay? Now, unfortunately, you cannot always control your belief systems because they're subconsciously rooted, which means you don't have conscious control over it. So just think about, for everyone listening, just think about it as you have two parts to your mind, the part that's light and the part that's dark. You don't see what's in the dark part, but that's running your light part. And so whatever your problem is, until you get into the dark part, there's no really changing the switch on how bright the light is. So if you want a brighter light and you want to see what's going on and you want to create actionable steps to manage so the dark part isn't so dark, you have to start with a conscious awareness. You have to start by saying, I have a problem. I can't eat and stop. I can't lose weight. That's the first step. Consciously, I can't lose weight. The next thing you might say to yourself is, okay, what's the next step I can take? What I find is that journaling, you know, in the last 30 years, I've never read anything I wrote. Never. But I need to write it down to get it out of my brain, to bring out of the darkness into the light. So if your listeners start thinking about what they can't manage as the dark part and what they can manage as the light part, then we need tools in the light part to help you hone the dark part so it's not as dark. So did that answer your question?
Yeah, and let me ask you this. So you mentioned, you made the statement, I can't lose weight. You identify that. And this whole positive mental thought process out there saying nothing negative, and that's not me. I'm an action guy. But I also say to my kids when they say, Dad, I can't, I have 5 kids, and they'll say, Dad, I can't do something. I can't, whatever.
That's a great question. And what's your question on I can't? Because I'm well versed on that. Trust me.
Well, this is what I'm thinking, because I have 2 ways of thought here. Is when they say that, I get upset. I'm like, hey, we don't use can't in our house. We got to find answers. You may not be able to do it now, but you got to find answers. Don't say can't. So I know that there's going to be people out there listening say, wait, we don't want to inject this negativity in our brain. But if we're not aware that we can't lose weight, we never are going to progress. So how do you answer that?
No.
The negativity.
You're right. Isn't it Henry Ford said? No, Henry Ford said, if you can't do it, you're right. You can't do it. And if you can't, you see, if you say you can't, you can't. And if you say you can. But you see, Audrey Hepburn said, I have a quote for everything because I like to make things simple. And so I have quotes. Audrey Hepburn said, impossible is not correct because I'm possible. Okay, so impossible is not correct because I'm possible. You see, here's the difference. There are certain things that I will say to you, like I can't be a doctor. Okay, let's make this very simple. I can't be a doctor. because I'm smart enough to know that learning science is not, I can't do that. It's too hard for me. My brain isn't wired that way. But can I use my brain to create ways to manage my life and help other people better? Yes, because my brain is wired that way. So I have to say, when it comes to can, one, it depends how badly you want it. Because when I want something, there's no stopping me, okay? That's number one. But I really believe it depends on how your brain is wired. So if you say to your kid, you can be a doctor, yes, you can. But if this kid is getting lower grades in science and math, the truth is that, you know, it might not be right for his wiring. But if your kid says, no, I can't write this paper, that only means the kid needs help. That only means that the kid needs a tutor to help him look at the construct of his writing and to help him learn how to bridge his paragraphs and write his sentences better. So it depends what they say they can do. It depends how important what they say they can do is in the arc of their lives. And it depends if they honestly believe that they can't do it, then you might ask them, well, why do you feel that way? So instead of just making it black and white, say, okay, I honor that. I honor that you say that you can't do it. Can you just give me a reason or two why you feel that you can't do it? Because that would bring it into a conversation as opposed to making it black and white. Does that feel better?
Yeah, you're very good at that. I am not as good. I just say, hey, let's change this thought process.
That's exactly why, because you know what I've learned, because I'm similar. Okay, Dr. Tressler, I'm similar. I like to get things down to bare bones. But unfortunately for me personally, I've learned to completely change myself because it wasn't allowing me to have the kinds of relationships that were working better for me. So what I've learned to do is understand that when someone says something, like I even have a blog called A New Yorker's Point of View, and I am really committed to understanding your point of view. As a matter of fact, your point of view is really interesting to me because I know my point of view, and I want to see what you think, how you got there, and then I want to find the middle. So what you're not finding by not asking them for a reason is the middle, so they're going to get defensive.
Yeah, and I love that where we can share different points of view. I just read in, I think it was Proverbs today, that we should continually learn. If we stop learning, and I forget how it was stated, but if we stop learning, we're going to go backwards. We got to be in a continual state of learning, and we have to have an open mind. Let me ask you this. I want to dive into how you did this, because what I hear from a lot of my patients, clients, they'll say, well, I have bad genetics, and I can explain that. Or they'll say, it's hormones, doc, I have bad hormones. And leptin, when if their leptin levels are off, they can't stop eating. And that may be part of it. But I agree with you with the mind thing. It has to be broken in the mind, and the mind can override everything, and your hormones will begin changing because of that. How did you do this? And what would you say to listeners out there that are stuck in that, oh my gosh, I wish I could change my mind, but where do I begin?
Okay, you're 100% right. I addressed that in my book. Look, I'm not a doctor. And I'm sure hormones, and I don't even know what you said. I'm sure all the, because for me, it's all the mind. For me, it's just the mind. Listen, if you have a challenge, it's the mind. You may think it's the body, and it may be the body in real time, but it's the mind. I can't tell you the things I've healed myself of from my mind. Okay, so what I'd like to tell your listeners I'd like to give them a visual demonstration of why diets don't work. And then I'd like to teach them the green technique so that they're able to see how the mind can let them manage the food that they say their body is causing the problem for. Does that work for you?
I love it. Yes.
Oh, I'm on 3rd Avenue, and there's lots of fire engines and police cars, so I'm really sorry about the noise.
Hey, this gives a little bit of fun in the background. That's all right.
All right. So let me share with your listeners why diets don't work. So I want all of your listeners to think of a diet as a clock. And we have 3 stations at the clock. Let's start at 12 o'clock. So 12 o'clock is your diet. What I like to say is that if diets worked, why would we need so many? That's a favorite line of mine, okay? So you go on a diet. What is a diet? Let's break down a diet. A diet is a group of rules created by professionals, nutritionists, doctors, chiropractors, who decide you can't trust yourself with food because you can't eat and stop. So we're going to tell you what to eat when and how much to eat, and you're going to lose weight, and you're going to get healthy, okay? And if you listen to us, like the Pied Piper of Hamlin, if you listen to us, you will lose your weight. And if you listen to them, you probably will lose your weight. So what happens? 12 o'clock, you're a happy person, you found a diet, you go on the diet. Now let's get to 3 o'clock. 3 o'clock could be an hour later, 2 days later, a week later. You say to yourself, yay, I'm good. I'm following the rules of the diet. I'm listening to what they say, and I lost a pound, and I really feel good about myself. I can book that cruise. I can think about that new dress that I want. And you really feel like your self-worth is based on the diet, which let's keep in mind are other people's rules. Now let's go to 6 o'clock. 6 o'clock. You've been on this diet for a while, different for each of you, and you go, you know what? I just want one Oreo cookie, just one. So you put your hands in the bag of Oreos at your girlfriend's house, and all of a sudden, before you know it, you had about 9 Oreo cookies. And then she has a bag of chips because she's having some women over for a chat. You say, I'm just going to have 3 chips. And before you know it, you've finished half the chips in the plate she put out. So all of a sudden, what does that mean? That means that, ironically enough, and this was the most amazing revelation to me, what you did was you diet binged, you diet overate, which means you took back the control from the diet that you started at 12 o'clock. You did the only thing that you could do to take back the control. So you didn't do anything wrong because you've been listening to this diet and you can't take it anymore. You want what you want, and to heck with the diet. And so diet binging or diet overeating is a two-sided coin. On the one hand, you took back the control from the diet and you feel much better. Wow, you feel so relieved. But the second part is you beat yourself up. Oh my God, look what I just did. I can't believe what I just did. I'm just useless. I can't manage food. I'm never going to be thin. I'm never going to be healthy. So what do? You go to 9 o'clock. 9 o'clock, you say, okay, I have no choice. I have no control. I'm going back to the diet because the diet knows best. But on the way back to the diet between 9 and 12, there's, in the back of your mind, there's another binge lurking that's bound to happen. So you go from your diet at 12 to being good on your diet at 3. You binge to get back the control from the diet, to then beat yourself up, to go to 9 o'clock, to return to the diet because you're low self-esteem, can't trust yourself, and you can't go near food. So diets don't work because they're not your rules. They're based on deprivation. You're at war with your food thoughts. You're thinking about what you can have on the diet, when you can have it, and what you can't. You're always thinking about food. And statistics show that 97% of all people who diet regain it in 3 years. Well, of course you regain it because you want the control, and you want what you want. But the problem is you don't have the choice to eat and stop. And that's what I'm going to teach you to do now. So are we okay with this, Dr. Tressler?
I love it. And I the whole big breaking this paradigm of overeating and obesity, if we don't get clear in our mind and get on purpose and have a why behind it or whatever that is, you're right. It's a yo-yo up and down and all around, and it will beat you down to the ground until you're mentally exhausted. And what I hear is, I just can't do it anymore. It's just the way I am.
Right. No. It's the way they are because what I like to do is I give out a free report called You're No Dieting, It's Not Your Fault report. And I tell people to give themselves, I want all your listeners to give themselves a big hug. Believe me, I've been there. Hug yourself all day. Of course you can't do it. How long can you listen to someone else's rules before getting exhausted? Not only are you listening to someone else's rules, Dr. Tressler, but then after you succeed, you're going to fail. Because let's face it, how long can you be a good person if you don't like the rules?
Mm-hmm.
So of course they're exhausted. And Dr. Tressler, honestly, there's really no place for them to go except when they look at the food to understand that now they manage the food. So I'm going to teach your listeners how to use one of the 2 techniques in my book. The no diet system works with 2 techniques. The first is called the green and the second is called the red. And I'm going to teach them how to use the green because then when the call is over, they can immediately make the choice. And make the choice to use it, and then they're going to see what magic can happen. So my terror was chocolate. My terror was chocolate. Now chocolate's my best friend, but it took a lot of work. You know, okay, there's nothing for nothing, folks. You got to do the work. So I want everyone listening. Or, you know, Dr. Tressler, you look like you're in great shape, but do you have, let's work as a team. Do you have one food that's hard for you to stop? And mine is chocolate. And
yeah.
I want all, yeah, okay, what is it?
It's probably many. I mean, anything sweet, chocolate. If you said, I have some hot chocolate caramel with some sea salt, whatever it is, I'm like, oh really?
Yeah, not hot chocolate. Okay, you mean like dark chocolate with caramel?
Oh my gosh. So yeah, very tempting.
Well, of course, because that's a fabulous kind of experience. so you love your dark chocolate with caramel and sea salt. I love anything chocolate, and I want you folks that are in listening to think of that food that when you start, you know you could be in trouble, which means you can't stop. Because I define trouble as you can't stop. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to explain to you and to your listening audience how to use the technique, and then I'm going to have you folks model. So the first thing I do is I have a chocolate bar. I have a Hershey bar in front of me. The first thing I'm going to do before I even touch the Hershey bar is I'm going to ask myself two questions. I'm going to ask myself, how much is enough and how much is too much? So now I'm going to do that mentally, and I want everybody to look at the food that's in front of them, and I want you to ask yourself that mentally. You know, Dr. Tressler, I want you to look at the caramel chocolate, whether it's in a, you know, pretend you have one piece in front of you or whatever you have. Hopefully, but I have to make a note here. Is your chocolate in a box or is it out of the box yet?
Visualizing, okay, it's out of the box and it's sitting on a plate in front of me. Okay,
awesome. So Dr. Tressler has his chocolate on the table on a plate. I have my chocolate bar in front of me because I'm from Brooklyn. We don't use plates when we eat chocolate. We just gobble, gobble. And you guys that are listening, I want you to think about that food that you have a tough time eating and stopping in front of you. Now, I want you to ask yourself two questions, everyone, before you even touch the food, because all the work is done before you touch the food. I want you to ask yourself, how much is enough and how much is too much? I want everyone to do that now. So let's take a pretend moment and ask yourself, how much is enough and how much is too much? And I'll give you a moment to do that. Okay, everyone has two amounts in their brain, the amount that's enough and the amount that's too much. So you've mentally separated the food in front of you into two parts. Now you can eat the amount of food that you decided was enough. Oh, now what you have to do is physically separate the amount that's too much, called your marker, from the amount that's enough. So I want you all to do that. Now, let's say you have a chocolate bar. So I scrape a little off my finger, you know, and I put my marker, the amount that's too much, under my fingernail. Okay? I do have polished nails. Don't worry, people. You know? But I want you to physically distance. I want you to actually take your hand and want you to physically move the amount that's too much from the amount that's enough. I want everybody to do that now. So now you have two amounts in front of you. You have the amount that's in real time. You have the amount that's enough and the amount that's too much. So now you can eat the amount that you decided was enough, but not the amount that you decided was too much, your marker. So I want everyone to pretend to eat the amount that was enough, but not your marker. Let's take a pretend moment and do that now. Now that you ate the amount that was enough, now look at your marker, and this is what your marker says to you. Yay, you just ate and stopped yourself, and I let you know that. So your marker lets you know that you had enough and that you could eat and stop. Now you might say to me, but Sora, you know, I really want some more of the chocolate, or I really want some more of the cake. Look at your marker, and before you can take more from your marker, again, ask yourself two questions. how much is enough and how much is too much. Then in real time, first separate the two, and then you can eat the amounts you decided was enough. You may never eat your marker. You must be left with a marker. And here's why. Because your marker lets you know that you had enough and you could eat and stop yourself. If you don't use a marker, I call that pre-programmed eating, which means that your mind is going to constantly send you the signal, I didn't have enough, I didn't have enough, I didn't have enough, and you can have another piece of chocolate and another piece of chocolate. Now, let's say you say to me, Dr. Tressler, I want 2 more pieces, Sora. You know, I'm going to have 3. Well, that's great, Dr. Tressler, but make sure you're left with a marker. Otherwise, nothing was enough, by definition in the program I developed.
That's fascinating. And, you know, when you first said this, you know, I think anything chocolate in my mind too. The only reason I put it on a plate, Sora, is because I'm in my office. Otherwise, it wouldn't have ever got to a plate either. So I would have just gobbled it up. But when you said that, let me ask you this. So when you said that, I looked at my chocolate and how much is enough? And I said, nothing's enough. And how much is too much? Everything is too much. My point was, I don't need any of this, because if I do eat it, it will affect me physically. I don't like the way I feel when I get sugar in me. So what I did when you said remove it, I took the whole thing and got rid of it. Is that possible? Is that okay? Because they're, again,
well, you know what? It's very reflective. I don't know, you know, but what do they say on TV? I want to read, you know, what do they say when they know someone? Like, you know, I don't know you, I've never met you, so I don't really know, you know, the person that you are, except from our prior little conversation and our conversation now. But that's very interesting to me. And what I would venture to say is that you shared with me that you are less conversational, more cut and dry, and maybe this reflects your relationship with food. Maybe, you know, because of your rules, and because you know that chocolate doesn't make your body feel good, instead of going to war with it and even using the technique, you said, well, I'm going to cut it out as well. I'm just not going to have it. But that's a possibility. You say, instead of dealing with it at all, you're just saying, okay, you know what? I don't even want you I don't even want to deal with you now. Like, I don't even want to do the technique. I'm just going to put you aside, and we don't have to have a conversation today. But you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So I'm all about conversation. That's something I had to learn and came at a high price. So I want to have conversations with my food. I want to have conversations with the dark part of me. I want to have conversations with you. So the people who are listening, who had conversations with the food in front of them, they had a conversation with the actual food. Okay, you caused me a lot of problems. Now I'm going to manage you. The tables are turned. How much is enough? How much is too much? Physically distant, the amount that's too much. Wow, I have enough. I can eat and stop. I'm left with a marker. I'm good. I'm in control. So that's the world I live in. So what happens is, that's the world I live in. So once you learn that you can eat and stop, what happens, Dr. Tressler, when you know you can always have enough of something? Do you want more of it or less of it usually?
When I say that again?
When you know that you can have enough of something. Let's say you live in a house. I mean, I'm just pretending here. And you want a gardener. I'm just pretending. And you say to the gardener, okay, this is what I want in the front, and this is what I want in the back. And the gardener does it. You say to your wife, okay, that's enough. Mm-hmm. So your wife says, well, maybe we should put in another 3 rose beds. So you say, all right, another 3 rose beds. But after that, you say, no, honey, we have enough. So when you have enough, you don't want any more.
Right.
So what happens is, watch this, because this is the magic, Dr. Tressler. When you keep using this technique and you keep eating and stopping and seeing if you have enough, those people that come to you that gave up, that's because they can't eat and stop. So why bother going on a diet, which they're going to go off of anyway? Right. But now you can say to them, you can have whatever food you want, but you've got to learn to manage the food in a new way so you can eat and stop. And I'm friends with food. I've made peace with food because I'm not always running after it. I don't run after food anymore.
See,
because I always know. You're people that eat a bag of chocolate. The next day they're going to eat another bag because nothing's enough. But once they know that they own that bag, that they can have enough, they may not want another bag the next day.
And I think that's the empowerment. It's funny when, like, if we have some type of ice cream cake or something that I like, I'll look at it. I don't set markers. I'll look at it and I'll take a little piece. I'm like, wow, that's a little piece. I'm like, since it's a little piece, I'll have another little piece. And before I know it, I've had many
right,
little pieces. So
right.
when we set a marker, so let's say I do that, and what I did with this chocolate this time doesn't mean I have to do that next time. I can set these markers, but so you're saying once I set a marker, let's say I split the piece of pie in half, and I say, okay, I can eat half of it. I take that, I split
No,
it
no,
in
no,
half.
no, but that's the wrong thinking. That's the wrong thinking. When you, let's say there's a piece of pie in front of you, Dr. Tressler.
Mm-hmm.
You just look at the piece of pie. It's your friend, and you say, have a conversation. How much is enough and how much is too much? Let's say you say half the pie is enough, because you must start with those two questions.
Right.
You know, you need to retrain your conscious thinking, because your subconscious is going to send you your answer. The dark is going to send the light, okay? So if you say, okay, Sora, half is enough and half is too much, I'm going to then say, slice it down the middle, push aside the half that's too much, and enjoy the pot, the half that's enough. And then if we were at the table and you said, you know, Sora, I want some more, I would say, okay, look at your marker, ask yourself how much is enough, how much is too much, again. And then you say, you know what, I want half more of the second half. You slice it in half, you push aside the marker, you enjoy the next quarter, and then you're done. So you don't have to, you see, what you did is you did a little at a time to control it. But now you don't have to do that.
And is that the empowerment? Like over time, if I do this, I'm retraining a habit, a mental habit that I see I have control now. If I take that piece of pie and I say, I'm going to have half the piece of pie, that's enough. And too much, half is too much. So I split it. I eat the half. And even though I'm maybe trying to go back at that, if I hold there and I succeed, does that success start to build a kind of like mental strength that now I'm starting to overcome my habits or my addiction?
Well, addiction is when nothing is enough, where the object, you see, now we're getting down to like more like the world that I live in. You see, addiction is never about what you're addicted to. It's not about the food. It's not about the drugs. It's not about the gambling. It's not about the sex. It's not about anything. It's about that nothing is enough. And until you decide how much is enough, you have no power. Now, of course, when it comes to like drugs and stuff, you know, or certain things, you want the person off completely. But the thing is, it's a retraining. You have to give this person things they can use in place of the drugs so that when they're emotionally troubled, they don't shoot up to anesthetize themselves. And then they have another tool to use to manage the difficult situation outside of them. But here's the deal. It's never about what's outside of you. It's always about what's inside of you. That's why I'm so big on belief systems. And between understanding there's the light, the people who come to you and who say, I give up, they're rightfully saying, that is correct. There is no place for them to go. They are correct. I honor that because I live there. There is no place because they have no empowerment. And if you put them on a plan, which I'm sure is excellent because I looked at your plan, they're going to go on the plan, and then they're going to want to leave the plan, and then they're going to become disempowered. What I say is there's no empowerment until you can eat the foods that you want and know when you can stop. And once you can stop, you can consciously release the anxiety attached to have to be on a diet, and it's a mental habit. So if you eat, let's say, 5 times a day, Dr. Tressler, 5 times a day, if you have 3 foods on your plate, chicken, a vegetable, and a potato, you have to ask yourself for each item, how much is enough? How much is too much? Pick a time on the plate. Put all your markers on the time. When you eat, you know your markers are at 12 o'clock. That way, after you finish eating, you know that you ate and stopped, you had enough, and you're good. Now, of course, what happens after that is once you start using the techniques, then you start to look at how you feel. Is your weight coming off? And then we talk about that. But it takes 21 days to break any habit. So you've got to use the techniques. And the 2 techniques work in tandem. But your folks can start with the green technique. But the red technique works with the green technique, and it's also very magical.
I love that. And is this in your book, Sora?
Yes, it's
Okay.
all in my book. And it's all in my book, and it's interactive, and it lets you practice, and it's very simple. I made it simple because I need simple.
I'm totally with you there. I love simple. I think when I start I love the science behind stuff and I read into the science, but after I read all the science, I remember the simple and I practice the simple. If it's too complicated, you're going to blow it. You're going to, or you'll have excuses. You'll say it's too complicated. This is too detailed, and boom, you're out
Yeah.
of it. And you'll make excuses, and those excuses
I
will kill you.
want to share something. Can I read I wrote a poem. Can I share with your listeners a poem about what their choices are?
Sure.
Listen, hold on one sec. Okay. So I wrote a poem that I like to share, and I think this will really set the record straight. So I told you I like to reduce everything. And the name of the poem is Choose Your Hard. Dieting is hard. Keeping your weight off is hard. You can diet, lose your weight, and then probably regain it. Or you can learn how to eat and stop yourself. Have the foods that you really want and reach your permanent non-dieted weight loss goal. Inch by inch, anything's a cinch. And yard by yard, life is hard. The choice is always yours.
I love it. Again,
And
simple.
that's because listen, I am all about simple, simple, simple. When those folks sit in front of you and feel, I can't do it, they're stuck. I don't do stuck. Stuck means you don't have a choice. There's always a choice. We weren't put on this earth not to have choices. I don't want to bring God into this, but God didn't make us to be stuck people. He just didn't. And if you're feeling stuck, it just means you're not getting the right help.
I love it. And, when we're talking about this and, everyone who's listening, I'm sure everyone out there can relate. We struggle in different areas. And if we don't get coached, if we don't buy things, like get in your book, somebody can get your book, read the book, dive into it and say, you know what? I'm going to get a little bit better. I'm going to learn this technique. I'm going to start moving forward. So, as we try to push our community healthier, we need support. I need coaches in different areas. We all need support in this. So don't hold back. Don't sit on the sidelines after the show and say, wow, that was a nice talk. She was so full of energy and she was so cute. Go get her book and start implementing it. Because our health is so important. And this will transform your life. I love what you've said so far, Sora.
Well, this is my kid. I was obsessed with, look, you go into Barnes & Noble, you go into Amazon, there's thousands of weight loss books. But the truth is, what I did that's very different is I actually committed to honing my subconscious I believe that I would be sent the cure. I know that sounds wacky, but I believe that if I worked hard enough on understanding why I thought about food all day, you see, let me give your listeners another thought. It depends on the age of your listeners, so I'm going to use several examples. Do you mind if I do that, Dr. Tressler?
No, I'd love it.
Okay, awesome. So when I was in the classroom, I had a science scale in my classroom. And on the science scale, you could hang weights. So the scale would either tilt right or tilt left, depending on what you put on the scale. One day I looked at the scale, and this is after I started journaling, and I said, how come, Sora, I see so many food thoughts a day when I really believe spiritually I should see more of a balance? So that got me thinking. And then I'm of the generation where the game was concentration. Are you familiar with the game concentration where they turn the squares? Well, okay. Anyway, concentration.
I remember the term concentration for a game, but I can't recall what it was. That wasn't the game where you put the pieces in where it vibrated.
Yeah. Well, let me just. Okay. Okay, so here, let me explain to folks why if they don't do my program, they're going to be dieting for the rest of their life. So what I like to say when in other presentations is that, let's say at the end of the day, everyone listening to this call had a chip. Everyone's brain was chipped. And at the end of the day, part of doing your taxes was that you had to put the chip in your computer and you had to print out what your brain looked like that day. So what I like to say for teaching purposes is that your brain has 35 squares a day. And the squares are only two colors. They're green and they're red. What I like to say is that a person without a weight problem, when he prints his chip out at the end of the day, he's going to see 21 green squares and 14 red squares. So he will have 21 non-food thoughts a day and 14 food thoughts a day, and he's not struggling with a weight problem. But then you take the person that's struggling with a weight challenge. When that person takes the chip out of their brain and puts it in the computer and prints it out, he's going to have 21 red thoughts and 14 green thoughts. That's because he thinks more about food a day than a person without a weight problem. The only way you can get to 21 green thoughts a day and be a managed food thought overthinker is to use the green technique to be able to see that you can manage the food by having enough. And what happens over time, if you're committed to the technique, is that you're going to think less and less about food because you're going to be able to have enough, enough, enough. And what happens is, over a period of time, not only will you lose your weight eating the foods that you really want, but you'll be seeing 21 green non-food thoughts and 14 red thoughts. And the only way to rebalance the colors is to have enough, because that's what shrinks the red squares. The green technique shrinks the number of food thoughts you see a day. So you're going to really have a permanent weight loss, which is really exciting to me, Dr. Tressler.
It's like that allows you to kind of beat an obsession that we're all probably struggling with to some degree, some more than others, obviously. But I agree. If we don't have enough, I think wins during the day. When I work out and I keep myself healthy, when I go and I perform, let's say when I still play rugby, or we played wiffle ball in the backyard with the kids. I still want to win. So when I play and I perform in it and I do good, I look back and think, wow, what I've been working at in the gym and working out, I can still do the things I love to do. So it drives me to go back and do more of that. This sounds very similar.
Right.
If we keep
You know what? You just hit the nail on the head. Now you can really put yourself in the feet of the folks who come to see you who say, I can't. It's true, Dr. Tressler, they can't. Because all their lives, they've been trying to eat and stop, all their lives. And they've used diets to help them control themselves. But ultimately, it's like, what I like to say is that a diet is like the Pied Piper of Hamlin. The kids followed the Pied Piper. I don't know if you're familiar with the fairy tale, but, I spent a lot of years in the classroom. So the kids follow the Pied Piper through the town, and he drowns them. They go into the river and he kills them. The diet will kill you because you can't win. Dr. Tressler, my mom used to say to me growing up, I don't care if you get a D, if that's the best you can do. Well, guess what? I'm going to say on this call, there's no best on a diet. It doesn't. It's a non-functional, habituated cultural default for people who want to lose weight. You think that if you listen to other people who know more than you, that you will succeed. Yeah, you might lose your weight, but I promise you, and statistics show that you will regain it. I have a heart full of empathy for the folks who say I can't do it. They can't. They can't. How do you like that one?
When I got into this weight loss thing, probably about 10, 12 years ago, I really didn't want to, because I looked at the market, and this is such a heavily marketed area, which so much nonsense going on and so much disbelief. You don't know who to trust, what is right, what is wrong.
Right.
And
right.
I looked at diets, and there's probably about 150 diet plans out there.
At least.
At least. And I thought, do I really want to go there? But I felt passion behind it, because I was dealing with some things in my life with over exercising. I was putting on body fat and I discovered some things, but I felt like I maybe I can make a positive voice here, which you are doing, Sora. You're making a difference. You have a different approach to this, that if we really get control of our eating and control over our mental challenge, man, we're going to succeed. And our success is all different in different levels. And you're doing a great job. I loved our conversation. I think this is great. And as we kind of wrap things towards the end here,
Sure.
You gave so many positive nuggets, and people listening, if you're listening, go back and just refresh yourself. Take time to start journaling. Take time to do the green technique where you're asking yourself, how much is enough of this food and how much is too much? Make that marker. And then I would say, when you do that, write it down somewhere and say, I did it. I got one marker in today. And if that's all you got, that's one more than you did yesterday. And you'll build on that. Positive energy starts to build in your life. So as we kind of come to the end, any positive, like, conclusion type wrapping things up that you maybe left out or you really want to add in?
All I want to say is to all the folks listening that I've been in your shoes. I've been in your shoes. I've been there. I had huge food problems, and I knew in my heart there had to be an answer, because I knew that I wasn't born to be this way. And I found the answer that works for me, and that's worked for the hundreds and hundreds of other folks that use my program. What I also want to say to you is that that it's your choice whether you diet or buy my book and try a new way. But I want you to understand, don't go to Dr. Tressler and say, I can't do it, because now you have a choice. Now you can do it. You can do it. And those are the words that I'm going to leave you with. It's your choice, and you can do it.
And Sora, where can they find you? Why don't you just explain your website, your book? Your book's called Eat What You Want, Stop When You Want. Can they find this at your website, Amazon? What's the best way to do that?
Sure. Well, they can find it at my website, which is www.nodieting.net, NODIETING.net, nodieting.net, or they can find it on Amazon.com or BarnesandNobles.com. And I will say that for the first 3 people that buy my book and write down all of their questions while they read the book, that if they email me, I will answer them.
Awesome. I love it. And you are so passionate about who you are and what you do. Sora is living in New York City right now. During the COVID, she's been stuck in her house, in her place for months. She's probably going crazy. So Sora, I so much appreciate you being on our show today. It was probably fun for you as well. It was a lot of fun. You're a great interview with Dr. Tressler, and you're really very open-minded, and you ask great questions, and I really appreciated this interview. Thank you. I appreciate that. And let me end with this. Any fun, crazy plans in the near future?
Well, true confessions, I had to cancel 2 trips this summer. Last week, I was supposed to be in Uzbekistan. I had a friend who called me up and said, you want to go to Uzbekistan? And I said, where's that?
I was just going to ask.
And then, so that fell through. And then I had something else planned. But, I'm a big believer in make your own fun. So, we just ended phase 2 on Monday, and literally I've been locked up for 3 months, and it taught me that I could survive. But I'm also, and I want to share this with your listeners, I'm also a big believer in turning lemons into lemonade. So as soon as I knew I was going to be in lockdown, I said, okay, Sora, what projects can you take on? What can you accomplish? How can you use this time so when you come out the other side, you feel that there was gain in the pain? Because I also have a saying, no pain, no gain. Okay? And I live by that. No pain, no gain, no process, no product. So for those folks listening, if you really want to let your weight go, get healthy, then decide, do you want to diet or do you want to buy the book and try a new way? And it doesn't matter, honestly, If you want to diet and that's your choice, that's who you are today, that's very fine. But no process, no product, because this may be the last time you diet before you go by the book. See, we're all in process, and you need to do what your next step is, but no process, no product.
I love it. And I would have done the same thing. I would have probably written 3 books. Thank God that we were still allowed to be open as chiropractors. But
okay, don't laugh. Don't laugh, but I'm writing my next. I was writing my next book.
See, I would have thought the same thing. And that advice you gave, I would say to everyone out there listening, when you have time tonight, wherever you are, when you get home, take your shirt off, stand in your underwear in front of a mirror, and say, "Is this what you want? Is this who you
That's
are?
Great.
And where do you want to go?" And look yourself in the eyes and say, "Is this what you were born for?" It's not about being perfect. It's not about having the hot bod that you see on the cover of magazines, but it's living to your full potential. And what you just said, turning lemons into lemonade. Wherever you're at in life, you can make a change. But look yourself in the mirror tonight, and if you look yourself in the mirror with underwear, it'd be a little bit more revealing. And say, "Is this it, man?"
First of all, I think what you said is so important. I think your folks should look in the mirror and say, "Is this the best I can do for me?" Mm-hmm. Okay, is this really the best? And also, is this the best I can do for me? Also, you have to want. Let me just share something about the fear of the unknown that I learned that I just want to share with your listeners, and that will help them take the next step. What I've processed so much. I've journaled so much about fear and not wanting to do things and wanting to do things and on and on and on. But here's the good news. Of course you're afraid to take the next step. That's natural. That's part of process because you don't know what you're going to meet on the other side. But here's the important thing to keep in mind. Yes, you don't know what you're going to meet on the other side, but which side do you want to live on? Do you want to live where you're safe and comfortable and unhappy and unstuck? Or do you want to take a risk and try something new? And worst comes to worst, go back to the other place. So that the unknown is part of the process. And once you process that the unknown is part of the process, it's not as scary.
I love it. We couldn't end with a better ending and a power statement. Sora, I thank you so much for being on the show today. I'm sure
my pleasure.
Are thrilled. There's a lot of positive, powerful advice here, but you have to take the action steps. So thank you for listening to Making Pittsburgh Healthy. We want to make Pittsburgh the healthiest city. And then if we can do that, other cities can join us and we can transform this world. But let's change every life that we can. Sora, thank you for being on the show.
You're welcome. Thank you, Dr. Tressler.